Part 1. The Boy Who Grew Up Without Privilege. This is a story about vision, struggle, rejection, and transformation. A story that shows how one small belief can change an entire life, and even change the world. Before we begin, take a moment and listen carefully, because this story is not only about business, it is about human strength and persistence. There was once a boy born into a very poor family in Brooklyn, New York. His name was Howard Schultz. His childhood was not easy. His father worked low-income jobs and struggled every single day just to survive. There were days when the family could not pay rent. There were nights when money for food simply did not exist. Howard grew up seeing stress, pressure, and exhaustion in his home every single day. But what hurt him the most was not poverty itself. It was watching his father get injured at work, and then being abandoned by his employer without support. That moment shaped something deep inside him. He realized something very important. Life is not always fair, and people without power are often ignored. This experience became the first turning point in his mindset. Even as a child, Howard started dreaming differently. He did not want to stay in that environment forever. He wanted to escape poverty, not only for himself, but to create dignity for working people. He was not thinking about luxury yet. He was thinking about respect, stability, and opportunity. But life was not going to make it easy. School years and the first dreams. Howard Schultz was not born into privilege, and he did not attend elite schools. He worked hard in school, but he was also an ordinary student. What made him different was not his grades. It was his hunger. He had something inside him that refused to accept limitation. He played sports. He worked part-time jobs, and he observed people constantly. He learned early that success is not only about intelligence. It is about opportunity and access. During his teenage years, he earned a football scholarship. This was his first major breakthrough. Sports gave him discipline, structure, and belief. For the first time in his life, he saw a possible path out of poverty. But even then, nothing was guaranteed. He still had to fight for everything. Every practice, every game, every opportunity mattered. He understood something powerful. If you want a different life, you must behave differently from your environment. College years and a new world. Howard went to college with a scholarship. For the first time, he saw a completely different world. He saw students from wealthy families, confident conversations, and big future plans. This made him realize something painful. He was starting far behind many others. But instead of giving up, he studied human behavior, communication, and business thinking. He became interested in how companies grow, how people build systems, and how brands influence society. After graduation, he entered the corporate world. He joined Xerox as a salesman. This job changed his life in unexpected ways, because it taught him rejection. Day after day, he was rejected by customers. Door after door was closed. But he learned something critical. Rejection is not failure. It is training. Every no made him stronger, more resilient, and more confident. He started understanding that success is not emotional. It is statistical. The more you try, the more chances you create. The first contact with Starbucks. In the early 1980s, Howard Schultz discovered a small company based in Seattle. It was called Starbucks. At that time, Starbucks was not a global brand. It was a small coffee bean retailer. It did not sell espresso drinks yet. It was just coffee beans, tea, and equipment. But something about the company fascinated him. It was not the size. It was the culture. There was a strong focus on quality, simplicity, and passion for coffee. Howard felt something unusual when he first interacted with the company. It was not just business. It felt like identity. He decided to join Starbucks. He took a job in the company, even though it was a big risk, because leaving a stable job in sales for a small coffee company was not a safe decision. But Howard was not thinking safely anymore. He was thinking deeply. He believed there was something bigger hidden inside this small company, something the world had not seen yet. The trip that changed everything. One day, Howard Schultz traveled to Italy. This trip became the turning point of his entire life. In Italy, he discovered espresso bars. These were not just coffee shops. They were social spaces. People gathered there every day. They talked, laughed, connected, and built relationships. Coffee was not just a drink. It was an experience. Howard was deeply shocked. He realized something powerful. America had coffee, but it did not have culture around coffee. He saw a vision immediately. What if Starbucks could become not just a coffee store, but a place for human connection? A place where people feel belonging. A third place between home and work. This idea was revolutionary. But when he returned to Starbucks and shared this vision, people did not agree. They believed Starbucks should stay focused only on selling beans. They did not believe in espresso bars. They thought it was risky, expensive, and unnecessary. Howard was rejected. Again. But this rejection was different. Because this time, it was not customers rejecting him. It was his own company. The first major conflict. Howard Schultz kept pushing his idea. He believed in it deeply. He tried to convince the founders of Starbucks, but they were not convinced. They saw coffee as a product. He saw coffee as an experience. This difference created tension. Eventually, Howard left Starbucks. He started his own company called Illinois Giornale. It was a bold move. He had no guarantee of success, no strong financial backup, only a vision, and a belief that coffee could be transformed into something much bigger. During this time, he faced serious challenges. Money was tight, competition was strong, and people doubted his idea. But Howard continued. He built small coffee shops inspired by Italy. He focused on customer experience. He focused on atmosphere. He focused on human connection. Slowly, his idea started to attract attention. People began to understand the concept. Not just coffee, but culture. Part 2. The return, the risk, and the beginning of a global idea. After leaving Starbucks, Howard Schultz stepped into a completely uncertain future. There was no safety net, no guaranteed income, and no certainty that his idea would succeed. But there was one thing he still had: his belief in what coffee could become. He had seen something in Italy, something powerful, something emotional, something human. And now he was determined to bring it to life. Building something from nothing. Howard founded his own small company called Illinois Giornale. At the beginning, it was not impressive. There were no big investors lining up. There were no famous partners. There was no global attention. It was just an idea, a few small stores, and a vision. He focused on one core principle: Coffee should not just be a product. It should be an experience. Every detail mattered. The lighting, the sound, the smell, the way people were greeted, everything. He wanted customers to feel something the moment they walked in. Not just caffeine, but comfort. Not just service, but belonging. But building this vision was extremely difficult. Money was always running out. Some days, he was not sure if the business would survive. There were moments when he had to decide between cutting costs or keeping quality. And he always chose quality, even when it hurt financially, because he believed something very important. If you compromise your vision too early, you lose everything. The struggle phase. Illinois Giornali began to grow slowly. But growth was not easy. Competition was strong. Investors were skeptical. Banks were hesitant. And many people did not understand his idea. They would ask simple questions. Why would people pay more for coffee in a place like this? Why would customers care about atmosphere? Why would anyone sit in a coffee shop for a long time? But Howard saw something others did not see. He saw behavior change. He saw lifestyle evolution. He saw emotional needs that were not being met. And he believed deeply that people were not just buying coffee. They were buying experience, identity, and connection. The moment of return. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening at Starbucks. The original founders were struggling to expand the business. They realized they needed new leadership and a stronger vision. And they remembered Howard Schultz, the man who had once left, because they did not believe in his idea. Now, they were considering bringing him back. This was a turning point. Howard was now running his own company. He had built something from scratch, and now the company that once rejected him wanted him back. This created a deep internal conflict. Should he continue building Illinois Giornali or return to Starbucks? It was not a simple business decision. It was emotional. It was personal. It was about identity. The difficult choice. Howard Schultz thought deeply about this decision. He had invested everything into his new company. He had employees, customers, and responsibilities. But Starbucks was different. Starbucks had potential at a larger scale. It had a foundation. It had a name. And most importantly, it had opportunity. After long reflection, he made a decision. He agreed to return to Starbucks, but under one condition. His vision must be fully accepted, not partially, not modified, fully. He wanted Starbucks to become something the world had never seen before, a place of connection, emotion, and culture. Not just coffee beans, but human experience. The return that changed everything. When Howard Schultz returned to Starbucks, everything started to shift. At first, there was uncertainty. Some people still doubted him. Some people questioned his ideas. But he was no longer just an employee. He was a leader with a vision. He began introducing changes slowly. Espresso drinks were added. Store designs were redesigned. Customer experience was reimagined. The focus was no longer just product. It was atmosphere. It was emotional connection. And slowly, something started to happen. Customers began to respond differently. They were not just buying coffee. They were staying longer, talking more, feeling more comfortable. Starbucks was no longer just a store. It was becoming a place people wanted to be. The power of a simple idea. Howard Schultz realized something powerful during this phase. A business is not only about selling. It is about creating meaning. People do not remember transactions. They remember experiences. They remember how a place made them feel. And Starbucks was now starting to create feelings. Comfort, familiarity, connection. This was the beginning of something much bigger. But the real breakthrough had not yet happened. Expansion was still ahead. Challenges were still coming. And global recognition was still far away. Part 3. Rapid growth, pressure, and the moment everything nearly broke. When Howard Schultz returned to Starbucks, the idea began to spread faster than anyone expected. What started as a small transformation quickly turned into a movement. But rapid growth is not always a success story. Sometimes, it is the beginning of chaos. The expansion begins. Starbucks started opening new stores across the United States. At first, everything looked exciting. New cities, new customers, new opportunities. The idea of the third place between home and work began to spread. People were not just buying coffee anymore. They were buying a daily experience, a routine, a lifestyle. But behind the scenes, pressure was building. Because growth brings complexity, and complexity brings problems. The hidden cost of success. As Starbucks expanded, the company started facing new challenges. Quality control became harder. Training new employees became difficult. Some stores started losing consistency. Some customers experienced slower service. And internally, the company was under stress. Howard Schultz was working long hours. He was traveling constantly. He was making decisions under pressure every single day. He began to realize something important. Success does not reduce problems. It multiplies them. The human side of leadership. During this period, Howard faced emotional exhaustion. He was no longer just building a company. He was responsible for thousands of employees. Each decision affected real lives. He started asking himself difficult questions. Am I moving too fast? Am I protecting the culture? Am I losing control of the original vision? These thoughts became constant, but he continued forward. Because stopping was not an option. The first serious crisis. As Starbucks grew aggressively, something unexpected happened. The company began losing its emotional identity in some locations. Stores started feeling too commercial, too fast, too transactional. The original feeling of warmth was fading in certain places. Customers began noticing the difference. And internally, leadership knew something had to change. This was the first major warning signal. Growth without control can destroy culture. The turning point meeting. Howard Schultz called a major internal meeting. He gathered leaders from across the company, and he shared a powerful message. Starbucks is not a coffee company. It is a human connection company. If we lose that, we lose everything. The room was silent, because everyone understood the truth behind his words. The company had grown, but the soul of the company was at risk, and something needed to be corrected immediately. Returning to the core. After this realization, Starbucks began to refocus. Training programs were improved. Employee experience became a priority. Store design standards were reinforced. And most importantly, the emotional identity of Starbucks was rebuilt. Howard emphasized one key principle again and again. Every cup of coffee must represent dignity, respect, and connection. Not speed alone, not profit alone, but meaning, the personal sacrifice. During this phase, Howard Schultz made personal sacrifices. He reduced time with family. He worked under extreme stress. He carried responsibility that few people could understand. There were moments of doubt, moments of exhaustion, moments when the pressure felt overwhelming. But he never stopped believing in the core idea that a simple cup of coffee could create human connection, the beginning of global momentum. After correcting internal issues, Starbucks became stronger than before. The company regained its identity. Customers returned with stronger loyalty. Employees felt more connected to the mission. And expansion continued, but now with more discipline. Starbucks was no longer just growing. It was evolving from a small idea to a national movement. And soon, the world would take notice. Part 4. Global Expansion, Legacy, and the Final Lesson of Success. After Starbucks stabilized its identity and internal culture, something extraordinary began to happen. The company was no longer just growing in one country. It was preparing to expand across the world. And this phase would change everything forever. The global idea takes shape. Starbucks started opening stores outside the United States. First in Japan, then in Europe, then across Asia and the Middle East. Each new country brought new challenges, different cultures, different customer behaviors, different expectations. But one thing remained consistent: human connection. The idea that coffee was not just a drink, but a shared experience, worked everywhere. People from different languages, different backgrounds, and different lifestyles, all connected through the same simple moment. A cup of coffee. The world responds. In every country Starbucks entered, something interesting happened. People did not just visit once. They returned, again and again, because Starbucks was not only offering coffee, it was offering comfort. It was offering a familiar environment in an unfamiliar world, a place where people could pause, think, and connect. And this emotional consistency became the foundation of global success. The challenges of scale. But global expansion was not simple. The bigger Starbucks became, the more difficult it was to maintain consistency. Training thousands of employees across different cultures was complex. Supply chains became more complicated. Competition increased rapidly. And expectations from customers became higher every year. Howard Schultz understood something very clearly during this phase. Scale is powerful, but fragile. If you lose focus at scale, everything collapses faster. Leadership under global pressure. Howard now found himself leading not just a company, but a global system. Every decision had worldwide impact. Every mistake was amplified. Every success was multiplied. He had to think differently, not just as a businessman, but as a global leader. He focused heavily on 3 principles: consistency, culture, and connection. These 3 ideas became the backbone of Starbucks' worldwide operations. The personal price of success. Behind global success, there was also personal sacrifice. Howard Schultz faced exhaustion from constant responsibility, travel across countries, meetings at all hours, continuous pressure to perform. Success brought recognition, but also weight. The weight of expectation, the weight of leadership, the weight of sustaining something that millions of people depended on every day. And yet, he continued forward. because he understood something deeply. Leadership is not comfort. Leadership is responsibility. The legacy moment. After decades of building, expanding, and refining Starbucks, Howard Schultz reached a point of reflection. He saw what the company had become: thousands of stores, millions of customers, and a global presence in everyday life. But more importantly, he saw something deeper. He saw a culture that had changed how people experience coffee. He saw employees who felt valued. He saw customers who felt connected. He saw a brand that had become part of daily human life. And he realized something powerful. The real success was not coffee. The real success was connection. The final lesson. Howard Schultz's journey teaches one simple truth. You do not need to start with power. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need approval from everyone. You only need a vision and persistence. He started as a boy in a struggling home. He faced rejection from customers, from companies, and from systems. He built something from nothing. He lost control, rebuilt it, and expanded it globally. And through all of it, one principle remained constant. Never abandon your core belief. Because success is not a straight line. It is a series of failures, adjustments, and persistence. Final message. If you are listening to this story today, remember this. Your current situation is not your final destination. Your struggle is not your identity. Your rejection is not your limit. Like Howard Schultz, you may start small, but your vision can still become global. If you stay consistent, if you stay focused, if you stay committed, then one day, your story will also become an inspiration.